Hello and welcome to Château du Sailhant. Château du Sailhant is located in the commune of Andellat, just a few kilometers from Saint-Flour. The chateau is built on a rocky spur. The particularity of this rocky spur is its height. It is 30 meters high on three sides, making the site totally inaccessible. The chateau has been owned by Mr. Lombardi since 1997. Mr. Lombardi is an American architect who lives in the United States, who specializes in the restoration of historic buildings and monuments. In fact, when he bought the chateau, he bought a veritable ruin. The roofs were redone as they were leaking everywhere. The towers were rebuilt because they were in danger of collapsing. Of course, inside the chateau, there was virtually nothing left. It would take 20 years of restoration to see the castle, as you will see in a moment. So now I invite you to follow me inside the castle. We'll start with the medieval section. We'll continue with the 19th century section. And at the end of the tour, I'll show you a few rooms that are normally completely closed to the public. So we're in the oldest part of the chateau. Of course, in medieval times, these were large rooms that went from one end to the other. It was Mary Reynaud in the 19th century who restructured the interior of the chateau, and it was then that partitions and doors appeared. The most important thing to look at in this room is the fireplace. And why is that? Quite simply because it's one of the few original fireplaces you'll see in the chateau. Unfortunately, when the chateau was abandoned, it was looted. The fireplaces disappeared. This one had been moved by Mary Reynaud in the 19th century to the Great Hall. Now it's back here. This is its original location, and it's been restored to its original condition. This was a period when everything was painted. This is paint that's been laid over it, and it dates back to the 16th century. During the visit, you'll see that Mr. Lombardi was keen to restore the chateau as closely as possible to its former glory. And all the furniture you'll see inside has also been bought back. You'll find collector's items in almost every room, not least in this one, where you can see the 18th century crossbow. Just like the chest you see here, a typically Auvergnat chest made in Salers at the end of the 18th century. Just behind me, you see a staircase that was added during the restoration at Mr. Lombardi's request. This staircase will allow us to visit the Great Hall, the witness to the medieval period here at the chateau. But first, let's visit the living quarters, in particular the dining room. So here we are in the chateau's dining room. The dining room was installed here in the 19th century by Mary Reynaud. As I said earlier, when Mr. Lombardi bought the chateau, his aim was to restore the chateau as closely as possible to its 19th century past. Archaeologists, geologists, historians, everyone will be coming to the site to take as many samples as possible and carry out as much research as possible in order to complete the restoration. When they do this research, they'll actually be lucky, is to discover places like the wall at the far end, where there were still traces of the chateau's original wallpaper. This proves that the chateau was wallpapered in the 19th century. Mr. Lombardi commissioned the Zuber factory to make all the wallpaper for the chateau, just as you would have seen it in the 19th century. The furniture you see in this room is in the Louis XIII style. Why? Quite simply because the armchairs we'll see just after the salon were here at the time of purchase. It remains in the same style. The chairs were purchased and fully restored. What you can see on them is painted leather. The table was made by a cabinet maker in Saint-Flour, and the earthenware on it was made for the chateau in Saint-Amand-et-Hamage. This model you see here is a Fontana model existing in the 19th century, but at the time it was extremely rare. So after a good meal, what could be better than to go have a relaxing moment in the living room? So here we are in the chateau's living room. In this room, you'll find a large collection of paintings. Again, these paintings are not chosen by chance. Most of them are by painters from Auvergne, famous in the late 19th or early 20th century. If they're not from Auvergne, at least we have scenes of life in the region. To give you a small example, on the wall opposite, you'll see Maurice Bousset's self-portrait. At the time, Maurice Bousset was quite famous in the region. He was born in Clermont-Ferrand. He won first prize at the Beaux-Arts and became director and curator of the Clermont-Ferrand schools. The painting you have just below, or the two large ones you'll see at the back of the room, are typical of the kind of picture he liked to paint, landscapes of the region. When he wasn't painting that, he was painting significant events. In those days, the most important events were the cattle fairs and the Auvergne fairs. The parquet floor you see in this room is the Chateau's original parquet, but here, of course, we agree, we're in the 19th century. The wallpaper you see in this room was reproduced following traces found above the fireplace. During the tour, you'll see that the chateau is very, very well furnished, for the simple reason that when Mr. Lombardi is in France, he lives in the chateau and he lives throughout the whole chateau. There are no private apartments. We're in the oldest part of the chateau, so they've kept the latrines, and I invite you to follow me to discover them. I invite you to follow me now, and we'll visit the great hall of the castle, which was very important in medieval times. So we're in the great hall of the castle. In medieval times, these great halls were very important in castles. It was here that the Lord received his guests. This was where feasts and banquets were held. These rooms were very lively and, above all, very well furnished. So here, it's not very furnished. We're leaving it medieval and also taking the opportunity to remind people that in those days, furniture traveled with the Lord from castle to castle. What you see here on the walls is a painted representation of volcanic stone. If you look closely, the motifs at the bottom are much larger than those at the top. This is simply to give the room an air of height. The fireplace in this room, it is not original to the chateau. It was bought from Saint-Flour, and we have no idea who it might have belonged to. One thing's for sure, it's either a chateau or a large local residence because it's very, very imposing. The fireplace has been installed in the location of the chateau's original fireplace and has been restored in the colors it might have had during that period. The coat of arms you see above, coat of arms of the Rochefort-d'Auroux family, lords of Sailhant from 1300 to 1383. It was chosen for the simple reason that it was this family who built this floor and the upper floor of the chateau. This family owned the castle during the 100 Years' War, and at that time they brought many defensive elements to the chateau. To the left of the fireplace, you can see the oldest piece of furniture in the chateau. It's a vaisselier from Auvergne and dates back to the 15th century. The musical instrument you see above is a hurdy-gurdy. It's a much more recent hurdy-gurdy. It dates from the 19th century and was made in the Allier region. You can also see a few decollection objects in this room. Here's a Celtic helmet, 400 years BC. The helmet you see here is called a sparrow's beak, a helmet that was used with armor in the 14th century. And the sword here is a French sword from the late Bronze Age. Let's situate the late Bronze Age, 10th, 11th century BC. I invite you to follow me into the chambre seigneuriale. At the time, these seigneurial rooms were often adjoined to the Great Hall. It was simply a matter of security. In the event of an attack, you'd be right next to the Lord to protect him. Of course, in those days, there were no partitions or doors, simply hangings to separate the two spaces. Hence the motif painted on the frieze at the bottom of the room, a reminder of that period. The colors in this room are not chosen by chance. It's the samples taken from the walls that bring out the trace of this slightly red ochre pigment, which is present here in this room. The frieze you see at the very top simply reproduces the motifs on the fireplace. A wooden Auvergne fireplace dating from the 14th century, which was purchased at an auction in Amsterdam. So this fireplace is a little special for the chateau here. If you look closely, you'll see a coat of arms in the middle. This is the coat of arms of the d'Estaing family, who had the castle walls shortened. The opening you see here is one of the chateau's original openings. Normally in those days, castles didn't have openings. Again, it was simply for security reasons, but here we're in a very special context, simply because we're right on top of the rocky spur. There's no danger of being attacked from this side. The opening has been made, and for the time, it's even relatively large. On the wall directly opposite me, you'll see a difference in color. Why is that? Quite simply because at the time, the chateau was being converted into a barn and stables. At that point, the peasants were going to make two openings in the facade, ramps going down into the park. This would make it much easier to bring hay upstairs. Mr. Lombardi wanted to keep a record of this. That's why you can see the difference on the wall. So that's it for the medieval part. Now we'll move on to the 19th century section. But first, let's take a little detour into the Great Hall to talk about the parquet floor. The parquet you can see in this room is the chateau's original parquet. This is typically a type of flooring that could resemble a barn floor. It's simply been stained and waxed and dates back to the 18th century. So we're leaving the medieval part. We're about to enter the 19th century. How do we know this? Quite simply because during restoration work, certain traces were found, including the loophole you see here, which dates back to the 14th century and which proves that at the time, this castle ended right here. So we are now entering the 19th century section. We are located directly above the porch. In this part, you'll find a number of rooms, including this Gothic room. A Gothic room, simply in terms of the furniture you see inside. Very fashionable furniture, particularly at the end of the 19th century. In this room, painting, paper reproduced identically, and especially this ceiling. The ceiling looks like it's been sculpted, but quite simply, it's a wallpaper worked with shadows, giving you that sense of depth. Here we enter the Chateau's petit salon, which was reproduced following traces found on the walls, because in this room it's all the same. If you look closely, it's all trompe-l'œil. It's all wallpaper, absolutely everywhere. The paintings you see are also strips of wallpaper. We call them panoramas. We're really in the 19th century. It's a period when trompe-l'œil was arriving from Italy and flooding the chateau and grand residences of France. So, of course, this room is also used when Monsieur Lombardi is in France, for the simple reason that it's the only room in the chateau where there's a TV. And it's been hidden behind the cabinet doors you see here. So here you are in the Renaissance room. Renaissance? It's the same. It'll be in relation to the furniture you see inside. In this room, you can see at the top that there's still a trace of an opening. This trace was preserved by Mr. Lombardi to explain to people that the chateau was in fact built over several periods, and each time the openings had been preserved. It is in fact a trace of the castle's construction. What's special about this room? We're in Mary Raynaud's bedroom when he owned the chateau in the 19th century. So the furniture you see here was present at the time of purchase and has remained as it was. And as a collector's item in this room is a chastity belt dating from the 17th century. I invite you to follow me now into the chateau's library. At the time, this room was Mary Raynaud's wife's bedroom when they owned the chateau. The bookcase you see here is one of the few pieces of furniture present when Mr. Lombardi bought the chateau. The style is 19th century Gothic. All the furniture in the room will be purchased accordingly, so as not to clash with this magnificent bookcase. The furniture you see here, on the other hand, is a little more recent. A lot of the furniture was even made from the beams of 𝐒𝐂𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐁𝐄 Cathedral when it was bombed. The opening you see here is one of the chateau's original openings. It was Mary Raynaud who had this opening made for her wife, a balcony window. This fireplace, however, we know where it comes from, simply because it was originally in the keep. It was relocated here during the restoration and dates back to the 15th century. And as you can see, we're in what we'll call the chateau's cabinet of curiosities. Many collectibles from totally different periods. We're going to find some chess sets. Chess sets can be found in almost every room of the chateau. The pipe collection starts on this piece of furniture and ends on this one. And you can also see a beautiful car. This car is a Bugatti. It's a motorized children's model made between 1933 and 1936. This room has a special feature. It gives direct access to the chapel, and this passage is a secret one. We simply open the doors of this piece of furniture to gain access to the chapel. I'll be taking you on a tour of the chapel in a moment. So we've finished our tour of the second floor of the chateau. I invite you to follow me to the second floor, which is normally closed to the public. But before leaving this room, I'd like to give a quick nod to the statue you see here in the middle of the bay window. Of course, we are in Auvergne. This is 𝐒𝐔𝐁𝐄𝐑𝐈𝐁𝐄. So we've just toured quite a few rooms in the chateau, and one question that comes up very often is, how does one wash in this chateau? Because we didn't see any bathrooms. So the bathrooms are closed to the public because they're in the towers and therefore very small. Nevertheless, I invite you to visit this very original one. This is Mrs. Lombardi's bathroom when they are staying at the chateau. So we're on the second floor of the chateau. Normally, this floor is not open to visitors. These are simply bedrooms restored in the 19th century style. Of course, unlike the one we saw on the floor below, you'll see that these are much smaller because at the time they were simply maids' rooms. So, as you can see, the chateau has been fully restored right up to the top of the towers. I'm going to take you into a rather special room, but in the meantime, I'll let you have a look anyway. This hip bath dating from the 19th century. So here we are, at the top of one of the castle's two oldest towers. You can see this roof frame, which has been completely rebuilt and restored, and this room has been transformed into an artist's studio. I've just shown you a tower where the framework has been restored, but I still wanted to show you a room where the original framework of the chateau still exists. This is at the top of the staircase we took to get to the Great Hall. So we've taken a tour of the private areas. Now, as promised, I'll take you on a tour of the chapel. But before that, I'd like to show you the chateau's kitchen, a kitchen that has been beautifully restored. So here we are, in a small dining room of the chateau. In fact, it's a dining room that's very often used, even when Monsieur Lombardi is present. When there aren't many of them, meals are taken here. It's a little warmer for 2 or 4 than in the big dining room, so this room is small, for the simple reason that at the time it was the maid's room. So here we are in the chateau's kitchen. The kitchen was moved here in the 19th century by Mary Reynaud and has now been completely restored. Of course, we can see a very beautiful kitchen range, custom made for the chateau by La Cornue. However, I believe the most impressive thing in this room is this earthenware, and this earthenware is very special. Mr. Lombardi called in a never-based craftsman to whom he entrusted photos of objects in the chateau and monuments in the region or 19th century postcards from Auvergne. And he had the ceramic tiles custom made. There are 400 of them, and each one is different from the others. All the coppers you see here were made in Villedieu-les-Poêles in Normandy and were stamped for the chateau. On the top is the boar, emblem of the chateau, and just below it the letter S for silent. So the sink you see here is a stone sink. It's made of volcanic stone, which is quarried here in the region. It's the same stone you see here on the floor, this paving. The only difference between the two is that on the floor it's sawn and left rough. However, to make a sink, worktop or shower tray, it has to be made much less porous. And this stone is simply polished. Once polished, it comes out black, as seen in the painting in the Great Hall. Promise made, promise kept, we're off to visit the chapel. This is the Chateau chapel built in the 19th century. The stained glass windows you can see here are the chapel's original windows. They date from the 19th century. All around the walls, you will see Stations of the Cross. This Stations of the Cross consists of 14 stations. They date back to the 19th century and are made of Limoges enamels. We have the particularity of having two rather rare objects here in this chapel. The first is what we call the Calvary. This Calvary, bought in Saint-Flour, dates back to the 15th century. It has one particularity: it's engraved on both sides, which was rarely done in those days. At the top of the walls, you'll see black virgins in homage to the Vierge Noire of Le Puy-en-Velay. We are not far from Le Puy, nor far from the Camino de Santiago or Chemin de Compostelle. The Virgin on the altar is one of the oldest objects we have here at the Chateau. It's a wooden Madonna dating from the 12th century. It's very, very well preserved. This Virgin has been dated for the simple reason that at that time everything was painted. When Mr. Lombardi bought this Virgin, the experts found traces of polychrome on her slippers. This will enable them to date it. In the 11th and 12th centuries, Virgins were found in many regions. But here in Auvergne, we were very, very rich in this type of sculpted object. The posture you see is what we call the throne of wisdom. Mary forms the throne with her body, and wisdom is represented by Jesus sitting on her lap. We are back in the inner courtyard of the Chateau. Just a quick word about the building you see at the end of the courtyard. This building is in fact quite simply the castle's keep. It's the oldest room in the castle. Back then this keep was much higher. It was simply demolished in 1633 by the d'Estaing family, who owned the Chateau at the time. At that point, the keep was shortened, as were the surrounding walls, which were all around the Chateau. This concludes our tour. I hope you've had a good time and that this video inspires you to come and visit us at Château du Sailhant for a full guided tour of the Chateau.